This conference will now be recorded.
Okay.
All right. I think we're all with it. I'll let you guys kick it off. I'm just an instant standby.
Well, we can pick up. We had just started talking about one of the updates left from the comments spreadsheet regarding the storage temperature and updating with some clarifying text for those fields. And I don't remember. I don't know when we got cut off, but the language for how that we'd like on those fields, was that in the spreadsheet, or is there a specific sort of phrasing we want for that?
Let's see. I'm trying to find where my comment, how I responded. Yeah, okay. So it's row 15. She says, I assume this is the storage temperature of the freezer settable solids test. Perhaps adding a sentence to this field to clarify would be helpful. And I said, I agree this could be displayed better to clarify the storage temperature is associated with the total settable solids and solids passing test. I didn't, I guess, propose a solution.
You want to put it in the chat?
Sure.
Just because sometimes I know it's easier for me to write stuff out so I can see it.
Yeah, that's great,
What it looks
because I'll
like.
copy and paste that right into all those fields.
Let's see, because right now it just says storage temperature. So maybe it just be storage temperature for total settable solid and solid passing a number.
One just sort of like form design consideration is, do we want the field name to be what you just typed in there, storage temperature for total settable solids? Or do you want that to be sort of clarifying text underneath the actual field heading, which is what we've done in some cases, where it's, like total chloride concentration is the field name in bold there. And then it has sort of a description of sort of more details of what the field is looking for.
I'm okay either way. Patty, do you have a preference?
I think just consistent, be consistent. So if we did it that way, I would just put it as clarifying under the header.
Okay.
Okay.
I have that. I'm just making a note and copying that to update. And then I'll add that to my list of edits. Okay.
Okay. The other big one I saw, so her very last line is row 18, and she says it appears there might be.
If you're looking at that table, can you
Sure. Yeah. Greg, can you let me share?
Yep, working on it.
Greg, do you have one of those like bikes or something? Is that what you're sitting on?
Dang it, you got that was fun. Yes, I do. I have a desk cycle.
Oh,
I noticed that the last meeting. I'm like, it's kind of weird. He's just like, I don't know if he's jamming out or what's going on there.
Yeah. That's 2 to 3 hours a day of light cardio. It's pretty good.
That's awesome. Christmas present?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay.
Yep.
He asked if it was a Christmas present.
Oh, was it a Christmas? Yes, it was. And I got an adjustable desk for my anniversary in late November, so that it would fit underneath and I could pedal without banging my knees. So
very cool.
I'm all set up.
Nice. Okay, so she says it appears there might be some things missing. There was no where to attach or enter the following information: SDS of the corrosion inhibitor, organic matter information, and waiver of pH request, which that's kind of up in the air right now anyway. Analytical testing procedure for verifying corrosion inhibitor concentration. So I did not see those. So we probably do need where they can upload this, correct?
Yeah,
I feel like the SDS could be put like wherever they have to upload the SDS of the product. That to me,
Of
that would be a good
course.
place to put SDS of the inhibitor.
I would agree. I don't know why we would. Yeah, I don't recall how that's done on the form anymore. I just don't recall, but I thought we had a spot where we listed paste here. I don't remember. I just don't remember.
Okay, so this is the last page where we just ask if there's a corrosion inhibitor, yes or NA. I have category 2 up. That's what I'm going through right now. So here's the
So what does it
table
say
2.
for the choose file there? So friction test, there's one. Go up. Toxicity testing, choose file. Okay. So we do it like per the thing, it looks like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, there's specific gravity.
Where do we have a upload file for all of the table 1 constituents?
Yes. So this is
Okay.
the first page. So this is the safety data sheet. So maybe this should be safety data sheet of
all
product.
safety data sheets,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
mean,
know, and then maybe a clarifying sentence like this will include an SDS of the inhibitor if applicable. So
I don't know. I thought maybe I would just say all product safety data sheet, or maybe just safety data sheet with an S in parentheses at the end of sheet.
sure.
I think that would
Because
be.
there's gonna be more vendors that are gonna do this, and if this confuses them, we know, okay, well maybe
Yeah.
we need a clarifying sentence or something.
Yeah,
So.
I would just in the meantime just add an S at the end of sheet.
Okay. With no clarifying sentence, just the S in parentheses there.
Yep. So in
Okay.
other words, if you have more than one, then they should attach
Yeah.
both of them. They should know how to do that. I mean, yeah. Okay. What were some of the other things that weren't?
So then any organic matter and waiver of pH request, are we just tabling that for now since
Well,
we're
I don't
not?
know I don't know what they mean by organic matter information, but I don't think we need to include a pH waiver request. I don't even want to go there, even in
Well,
the
I think
future.
the current form asks organic content. It asks like a % of organic content.
Yeah, but I don't think
So
we need that information. I mean, we actually there are categories based on the % organic matter, and isn't that just isn't that in the test? How do we get that information? I think it's in a lab test, right? I don't remember.
yeah, and I think they just disclose that on the submittal form, but I think they disclose it as part of if whether or not they want to apply for a waiver.
Well, but there are some categories that are more than 60% organic. Like, right, we have a category that's based on % organic matter.
Right.
So in
and
the
I think,
category, it should have a
so
space.
should we check that to see?
Yeah, because otherwise I don't want to have it in here unless it's necessary for the category.
Which category? I forget.
I can't remember either. Let me look. Do you want me to look?
Sure.
What was the? I can probably look too. What was the field?
% organic matter.
Category 13 has a % for organic content.
Okay, perfect.
So there's 13. So we got all the table 1. Okay, all this stuff. Here's the organic content.
I don't see it. It's at the top of the screen, maybe.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. Right here.
Yeah, and then is there a place on this page where you submit a file that shows the information that we're asking for?
No.
Because all of that stuff would be in a lab report, right?
Yeah, so the independent lab report, I believe the first page has where they can upload that.
Okay, and then
Yeah.
the assumption is okay, so that should be for everything. All of their lab
Mhm.
test results should be there. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that I think it's probably adequate then.
Okay. And then the other one was analytical testing procedure for verifying corrosion inhibitor. So that I think is important that they do
Yep,
that.
yep, absolutely.
Um,
We've agreed.
so
Yeah,
so going back to category 2 as an example, I wonder if the best place for that would be the other place that we're asking about corrosion. So here
yeah,
where it says
yep,
corrosion inhibitor, if they check yes, then they should get an upload field to upload the
yes,
procedure.
yes, yep,
Okay.
perfect. If they click
Well,
NA, then they don't have to, but if it's a yes, then it should prompt them to upload corrosion effectiveness test procedure or corrosion inhibitor test procedure.
Yeah, we call that, yeah.
Analytical test procedure for verifying corrosion inhibitor concentration. Yeah, I would
So I'd
just use
say,
those words exactly, right?
well, I would say maybe corrosion inhibitor concentration test method. I'll type that out for you.
perfect.
Or concentration test method.
Okay, 1 second here while I note this.
And then maybe we should just go through these one by one and make sure we've addressed them. Does that sound good?
Sure, let me just double check that I have this correct. For the corrosion inhibitor, if they select yes, it'll open up an upload file field that says corrosion inhibitor concentration test method. If they select NA, then nothing changes there. That covers that?
Yep.
Okay. And that
Yep.
would be, okay, cool. Got it.
Okay. Okay, so her first one was just if she wants to apply for same product for 2 different categories, she has to fill out for each, and Patty said yes, and I agree. So that's easy. This one, is this intended to be all of the lab test results, chemistry, freeze point, biomonitoring, or is it just the chemistry report since freeze point and biomonitoring are asked for later? I merged all 3 documents and added it as one file. If it's intended to be just the chemistry results, perhaps a clarifying statement could be added. And then you said, Patty, we had different sections that asked for those documents, and that's true. So page 3 of the submittal is for all the table 2 stuff, and there's our upload fields for those specific ones. So I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll maybe just see how other
Yeah,
vendors submit.
I think it's fine the way that it is. And if they put duplicate documents in there, they just have it all as one PDF and they load it and every time. I don't really care. I don't think I care.
Okay. Okay. So then she asked about, she says, analytical labs reports this is total phosphate as P. Is it worthwhile adding this verbiage to the form to clarify? So I did some looking. So table 1 in the guidance document says phosphorus. And then the method to determine that, the guidance document says total phosphorus. So I looked in that method book, and under phosphorus, it kind of says how, okay, so phosphorus occurs in natural waters and wastewaters almost solely as phosphate. Okay, so this is really just a different, it's calculating, it's like converting phosphate into phosphorus, and then like that's how it's reporting it. So it says the test, it reports it as phosphorus, which is how analytical labs like writes it, as phosphorus. So it's a lot of kind of confusing back and forth. And I guess I don't think it really necessarily matters. My one thing is I don't know if we want to try and mirror analytical labs necessarily, because there's going to be other independent labs that maybe use.
Yeah, no, I think it's not our job also to help them understand their lab report. So I think just leaving it as phosphorus, which is the requirement in table 1, is adequate.
I would say leave it alone as well.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Oops. Okay. So next one, she says analytic reports this is pH de-icer 1+4. Is it worthwhile adding this verbiage?
No.
I agreed with Patty. No, I don't think it matters. We could or could not. Then as I was looking, you did fix that one. It was just 0.1 from 0.1.
Yep.
Yeah. So I would say we leave it alone, because the test method in the guidance document tells you what you're supposed to do. So I say leave it alone. Okay, so then she says many of my reported results came back as less than, but I can't enter less than symbol in the field. I suggest adding this functionality. So initially I agreed, and then I kind of read through Josh's response on that. And then my follow-up, I said, I initially liked Josh's plan to let them enter 0. I don't think we want to give up the max input functionality. After thinking about it more, though, I think we would need to add a field. They would need to fill out what the detectable limit is. There's a section under Table 1 in the guidance document that cautions the reported result must be the specified limit or below. And we even give an example in the guidance document. So the limit for cadmium is 0.20 ppm. Therefore, they can't enter the value is less than 1. Because if it's less than 1, it could be 0.9, and 0.9 is actually greater than this. So, so that's why I don't want to just go with less than 1. I don't want to do that. So I don't know what
So
your thoughts.
can we add decimal? Like what? I don't understand maybe it would be helpful depending on what field it is, but like I understand what you're saying, Jasmine, is that some of the values, not the test limit, but the requirement is that it's less than 1. Like
They
right,
can
copper, I
enter.
don't.
They can enter a number that's less than 1, but it sounded like like that's available now. They can put 0.09
Okay,
or whatever.
okay,
Um, the
right,
the
but
issue is if they wanted to say it's less than 1 without specifying an
right.
actual number.
Yeah, I guess we would have to look at the lab because I think some lab reports are, yeah, that's what it would say. It would say less than whatever
Here.
yeah, the test.
Okay, so let's go with arsenic. Okay,
Yeah,
so the result is less than 1.0. So then,
and the limit is 1.0. So if you get less than 1, that's great. We don't care.
yeah.
Can we add can we just add ugh. I was gonna say add a field to that you could click on a less than if it is, but I don't, that just sounds
Well,
messy.
well, the one thought was if you put 0, because it's not going to be 0 is not going to actually ever be 0, right?
You could,
Or could
yeah.
it
I
be,
mean,
or could it be
zero's
zero?
a valid result. Yeah.
It is. Okay. I'm just trying to think of a way for them to indicate that it's less than 1 while still keeping that field be a validated number field.
Yeah,
Or
it's not that
and
it's
this is
less than 1, it's that it's less than
well, it depends.
the
But here's the
limit,
deal:
right?
it's always going to be. See, this is what makes it tricky. Is it's always going to be a different number because there's different
Yeah,
detection limits. So like, let's look at
right,
cadmium. It's less than
right,
0.05. So
right.
there's a limitation on the equipment that you're using to do these tests that are going to have these different limits. So to Patty, because I was kind of thinking the same thing you were, is if we had, say, arsenic was less than 1.0, which is what the lab report says, could they write 1.0 and then check a box that means less than? And that way you're
Well, why don't we do this? First of all, we're gonna get the test results, right? We're gonna be able to
yeah,
look at
they'll
all
be
that.
uploading that. Yeah.
So if they just put in 0,
Then
why is that bad?
it triggers us to look closer at
Yeah, we'll just look at the lab report.
the only danger to that is the Trixie vendors, if they input a concentration that fails, because it won't let them move forward if they put in a failing number, they may just enter 0 just to move forward
Well,
and still
I don't know
submit.
that I mean,
If that doesn't bother you, then
I'd say let's cross that bridge when we get there. But in the meantime, if you're, and maybe we put that instruction at the top of table 1, right? Right under table 1, if test results that are less than, enter
the detection
0
limit,
as the.
yeah. So
That
test
would work. And,
results
you know,
that are less than the detection limit,
As 0, yeah.
enter 0. That look okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
okay, so I will
Cool.
add that to the table 1 instructions. Okay.
Awesome.
All right. Next one. So ammonia direct, ammonia distilled. I called and I had a really good conversation with James Hibbs about this one. It's measuring the same thing as 2 different test methods, is what it is. And he gave me a lot of really good information, and they said that ammonia direct test is biased low, and that's why CDOT ended up using it, and because it's a little more forgiving. If something goes too high, then you're tending to fail it, and so if this is biased a little low, you're less likely to fail something. But I do think we do need to agree on one method and actually specify that in our guidance document so there's no more
You don't have a
confusion.
method for that in the guidance document?
We
Surprised.
do. You know what? Let
And
me.
that's table 2, right?
Yes.
Because if I recall, ammonia is 1 that's just informational.
All right, got excited there. Okay. So table 2. So we just say ammonia and nitrogen.
Test method
We don't.
16,
Yep. So 16.
right?
Ammonia as described and they have both methods. Now, I went back when she said that in her lab report she has both. I was like, I do think I remember seeing both. And so I went back through several of our previous, product submittals, and I looked, and a lot of the more recent ones, there's only the one. There's only the direct. And James said they only do the distilled method if it's requested.
I don't
So,
even want to, I think it's fine the way that it is.
and we can just leave it alone
Yeah, I think
because it's I mean, it's calculating the same thing. It's not two different things you're measuring. It's the same thing you're measuring. It's just two different ways of doing it.
yeah. And I think if someone calls and says, I have 2 ammonia results here, which one should I put in? I'd say, I don't care.
Pick one.
Put in either and we'll look at it.
Yeah.
So I don't think I care about that.
Okay. So we'll leave it alone.
Yeah.
All right. Next one. Nitrate and nitrite. So these are reported separately on the lab report. I assume that they should be added together for this field. Is it worthwhile to have them reported separately? So I did some looking on this too. And my initial thought is they're meant to be combined because they're on the table together. They're not separate lines. And so that's something I kind of had to do some more looking into. And then I think I found on the internet somewhere, but it says this nitrite is easily oxidized to nitrate. And so for that reason, I think we do need to leave them together.
Yeah, I agree.
Because if it's easily changed, there's no point in how much nitrate is it? Well, I don't know, because 5 minutes later it's more
Right.
nitrate.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'd say just leave it the way that it is.
Okay. Okay, so the next one, friction. And then I think we did that. And the phrasing I thought was fine too, how we had that on there. So getting that field. So I think we're good with that one. Let's see. Yeah, okay, it does not allow me to enter anything less than 30. And then, yeah, I think you fixed that, Josh. I think I checked it. So I think we're good on that one. And weight. She says the lab tested and reported specific gravity. Is it possible to change the form to enter specific gravity or weight pounds per gallon? For this exercise, I converted specific gravity in kilograms per liter to pounds per gallon myself and entered it. So this is something that makes me twitch a little bit. Specific gravity, by definition, is unitless. It's a density of one solution comparing to a density of another solution. And usually that comparison is compared to water, which water by definition has a density of 1 grams per mil or whatever. It's so when you divide something by 1, you get the same number. But when you divide a set of units by a set of units, those cancel out and you're unitless. So specific gravity is unitless. Which I think I kind of did my little rant there too. So I said, I think we want to know pounds per gallon, so I have no problem expecting them to do the conversion. But that's just me.
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay.
I think we leave it.
It's not hard to convert.
No, that's what we want. Oh, God.
Sorry, that one just gets me a little worked up. Okay. So it's settable solids. So again, that less than. I kind of did a 180 on this one though.
What do you mean? We just solved that one.
Well, for this particular one, yeah, because our max concentrate or the max limit for settable solids is 1.0%, which if you're doing the test correctly, that's 10 mils. So there's a lot of cones out there available with gradations below 10. So I don't think we need to add any language. I think we leave it completely alone. That's my
Okay,
2 cents.
that works for me.
Let's see here. Okay, freezer settable solids. Again, I don't think we need to mirror what analytical lab calls it. We call it what we call it.
Agreed.
So I say we leave that alone. Okay, so we've already talked about this. adding that for storage temperature. Okay, solids passing, same thing, leave it alone. And then the last one, we've already handled that one. Analytical Labs calls this percent solids passing number 10 sieve, and I put on here, I think we should change it to this, how the guidance document reads, and Josh updated it, so I think we're good.
Okay. All right. Well, excellent. Thanks for making those changes, Josh.
Sure. Yeah. I have a few sort of process questions to get to, unless there's anything else you wanted to address before that.
I have a question that I don't want to forget to ask later.
Yeah.
Is I know we talked about using that gravity flow.
Yeah, that was one of the things I wanted to look at, is the sort of the process of what happens.
Okay, let's do it.
So there's a few different ways there's a lot of different ways it could work. It's sort of like figuring out what's going to work for you all and those submitting the form. We had talked about the possibility of sort of someone submits the form and then that goes into this flow that notifies, and then you look at the submissions and verification and you send it back to them and they go back and forth. We can create something like that. I guess one caution I would have is to sort of make is against making the sort of the back and forth notification process too complicated by trying to make it simple, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So if we kind of make this elaborate, sort of like if this, then that, and
Yeah.
then that's a thing that needs to be maintained and updated as those things get changed. So we just want to be aware of, sometimes we're trying to like make a really complicated solution to something that might be a simple or way to do it.
Makes sense.
So so someone submits the form, and by making the fields specific and required, hopefully that's going to, yeah, Jasmine.
Really quick, Greg, do you want to let me share the screen again, and I'll pull up the flow chart of our process, and that might be a good visual aid as we're going through that.
Do you have a share button, because you're still the presenter?
Oh, it still lets me do that. Okay, cool.
And so Doug McBroom is calling, so I'm going to answer this real quick.
Okay. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So process. Go, Josh.
Yeah. So by making this form very specific and with all of these required fields, hopefully that in itself will simplify this process too. So when someone submits the form, a notification will go out to whoever it needs to go out to. And it could go out to multiple people, and it can also go out to different people under different conditions. And I don't know if that would be useful at all, but okay. So that
sounds like a pain to manage. I don't want to manage that.
Yeah. And the only, just a quick note on that is, like, in some cases, there might be a form like this where if someone answers this to this question, then let's send the notification to this group of people. And if they answer, so if that were to apply, that is sort of part of how these notifications work.
Okay.
So one sort of the first step of this process when they submit the form is what happens when they submit the form. And the notification can also go to the user saying, we received your submission to the QPL, and whatever instructions you want to include in that sort of automated reply to the user notification. With maybe next steps or a timeline, or whatever we determine is.
I think that would be great. I think an auto reply to the submitter would be great.
Okay, and we'll follow up on email exactly what you want
Yep.
that to say and sort of the instructions of that, if there's anything they need to do, or if they just need to wait, or whatever
Yep.
information you want to include to them about how this process works, or if it's thanks for your submission, you'll hear from us shortly. You know what I mean? Okay, so then the other notification will go to someone on your end to basically, well, yeah, to say somebody submitted the form. So then we kind of know what to do with that next. So now we get into the next part of the process of sort of verifying the data in the submission to sort of get it to its finished state, I guess, right? So what does that look like ideally on your end, based on your submittal process here?
Who it would go to? Is that what I'm hearing you ask?
Well,
Who gets-
I mean, it doesn't really matter at this point in terms of specifically who it goes to. At some point, we'll have to like put in an actual email address of who that notification goes to, just to say, hey, somebody submitted this. If you want to review the entry, there could be a link to the entry so that, on your team can go look at what the submission was. So then what happens then, I guess, is my question. So someone submits the form, you get a notification, hey, somebody submitted the form.
Right.
Now what?
So
So
after someone submitted the form, and I'm just talking out loud, and I have to say things in order.
yep.
That's not true. I'm all over the place. But right now the submittals are, I think, coming to me and Greg if they hit the submit button on the submittal form. And I think I would recommend, keeping it that way. Just because that helps me filter crap out before bothering Jasmine about it. So we would get it. They would have an auto reply, something along the lines of, if you don't, thank you for your submission. If you don't hear from someone shortly, please contact Patty Caswell at blah. That would be my standard response. And then I would be looking through those documents and making some comments somewhere, right? Like either looks good, Jasmine needs to take a look at this. Because I'm just kind of I give it a first cut to make sure that it passes the kind of straight face stuff, like things are in there. And I think, again, Josh, like you said, I think should help us with that, so that oh, they didn't put that method in there for how to determine how much inhibitor is in their product. Oops. I think some of those things should be pretty obvious when we look at the form. And then I would ping Jasmine to take a quick look at it as well. And if I saw anything that looked weird, and then she would review it and some indication that it was looked at by her. And then she would let me know. And then I would get back to the submitter that said, your product, it appears to meet the specifications. Please send sample product to, and then I give them an address. Does that make sense? Is that what you're
Yeah,
asking me? Kind of what that process looked
yeah,
like?
yeah, yeah. So that's what we're kind of figuring out.
Okay.
Well, there's sort of there's the process you actually go through and sort of you're looking at,
Yeah.
and then there's sort of the technical process of
Right.
what can happen and how we can kind of make that work
Yeah.
to facilitate.
So hopefully on this flow chart, paperwork incomplete, we should be avoiding this kind of first do loop here with the way that we've set up that form. So it should almost be, email receipt to the vendor and then review the paperwork for completeness, which that should kind of be a no-brainer, but who knows, right? That'll help us inform, oops, maybe we need to change the form if they're allowed to sneak these things in. Okay, great. That's our feedback thing. And then once it's complete, just like this box says, we would let them know, it looks good. But that would be, yeah, that would be where Jasmine, like that box there, paperwork complete, email vendor. I think that one would probably just be, I don't know. Yeah, I guess we would be doing that. I'm assuming that most of the time it's going to be complete, and then we're just checking to see if it's meeting specs. And then I would pass it, and then, but I wouldn't really do that without Jasmine reviewing it. And then we know that they met this, based on the data that they submitted, they passed the specs, and then we request product samples. But
Okay.
the problem with the product sample is that it'll vary depending on the lab, like whether we send it to Nebraska or Montana for testing. So that's not as standard a letter response, because depending on what type of product it is, if it's an inhibitor, I think Montana's doing I can't remember, or you're doing inhibitors, Jasmine, and Montana's
I
doing
think
like
no,
solids.
I think Montana has been doing the inhibitors, and I think Idaho was supposed to do solids, and
Yeah.
then no. So we've been doing solids and liquids
Okay.
here.
Okay.
So
But the pure
let's,
inhibitor categories go to Montana. Is that what I heard you say?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
so if we can just pause for a quick second. So if they, if in the process when you're reviewing, okay, if everything, you get the submission and there is an issue with their submission that they need to update something, or if they need to change something that they entered, okay, do we want them we want them to be able to access their entry and edit their entry. Is that right? So we need a
That's a
way
good
for them
question.
to go in and edit the entry they already submitted, as opposed to, or do you want them to resubmit from scratch? You know,
Mm,
I'm just, this is sort of my back end. How are the things? If you say,
right.
hey, we need a different number for this, or we need some obviously the fields are required. So it's not that, hey, you forgot to submit this, because it is going to be required. But if they need to change something that didn't pass for whatever reason, what is the process for them to change it? Do they go in and have a way to edit the form and go, all their fields are still there? Or do they just resubmit and put all their numbers back in again?
Yeah, that's a
And
good
those
question.
processes are a little bit different. Obviously, if they're
Mhm.
just resubmitting, they're just going back and starting from scratch. If they're editing a submitted form, there's sort of more back end things, because they need to be able to access a form on the website that they submitted. And are they creating a user account to log in to access data they created?
I
You
don't
know,
know that we want to manage all of that, Josh. That just sounds like a headache. I would say that the way that we sort of do it now, um, is if they don't meet something, we basically trash that submittal and they have to resubmit.
Can you do
So
like a
I
kill and
maybe
fill type thing? Like if they have to resubmit, you just trash their original submittal.
yeah.
Can you do that in the system?
yeah. So there would be, there's sort of the three different states of the submission. Essentially, there's just kind of waiting, kind of a neutral state that it's been submitted, and then there's approved, and there's denied. Okay, and sort of what those end up determining ultimately is, where does that entry data go on the front end of the site? And that's also what I want to talk to you about, which we haven't really talked about. What happens once all of the submission process is done, they're approved, where does all that data go, and how do we want that formatted or whatever? But that's
Okay.
kind of where we get to the approved or denied. If they're just sort of denied, then it gets kind of shelved into the denied uh, um, section, and then they just resubmit. So kind of jumping ahead a little bit, if there is a place where sort of these entries get displayed in some way, it's set up to say only display approved submissions. So when an entry comes in, it's just neutral. And then once it's approved, then that allows it to get displayed somewhere. Or if it gets denied, then it just gets removed from the system.
And I don't,
So yeah.
yeah, here, I guess I don't know about, I'm having a hard time visualizing that, I guess, Josh, but I guess what I would kind of want, I'm just kind of talking off the top of my head. Submittal comes in, it doesn't pass for whatever reason. It just goes into this bucket over here as a not pass. So we
Okay.
still have that record. We know that
Yeah.
they submitted it, and we have the records that indicate that it doesn't pass.
Yep.
They resubmit. Oh my gosh, it passes. It just goes into a different bucket that passes.
Yep.
We keep that information there. And
Yep.
then I don't know that I would automate any kind of posting per se, right? I think this is all just behind the scenes stuff for us to manage.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would let Greg know, hey, this one passed. You can check out the information on the whatever, but here's how I would display. I wouldn't change the way that we really do that, which is I send a physical email to Greg, how it's going to be displayed in the QPL, and then he gets it updated there. Does that make sense, Josh? Is that
Yeah.
information that you? Okay.
So
So I'm basically saying I want to keep all of the information on all the submittals, and we
yeah.
need to have some indication whether it was right, what state it's in. Is it
Yep.
still in process? Has
Right.
it been reviewed and rejected, or has it been reviewed and accepted?
Yep.
I think those
Yep.
are the
And
three
that's
parts. Okay.
yeah.
Perfect.
And it's all that part of this. There's nothing I need to do sort of customizing anything. It's all kind of that's ready.
Perfect.
It has that sort of,
Okay.
there's like a green check mark if it's approved and a red X if it's goes
Right.
into and then if you want to look at all the rejected ones, and you could
Right.
change the status of a rejected one to approved if
Okay.
that ever became something. But they don't need to
Okay.
get trashed and disappeared. They can just kind of get filed away, like you said.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I know when we first put this flow chart together, and Patty, I don't know if you have this somewhere, and it just our internal, is we kind of were giving ourselves some deadlines for each
Mhm.
step so that we didn't, take forever. Would there be value in being able to look to see at what part of the process that a sample is in? Like, for instance, we received that Clear Road sample, or not Clear Road, the Clear Guard from Tiger Calcium. We received
Mhm.
that. So it's in my lab being tested right now. Would there be value in somehow? I mean, I would have to like manually go in and say, hey, I received the sample.
Yeah, I think there's value in that for sure.
So is there a way that you could do something like that, Josh? Like making sure like where and the time it's taking us for each step, so we can kind of start.
You guys, I
Yeah.
have to go. I'm sorry. You guys can keep talking. I have to go. I
Okay.
apologize.
Okay. We'll see you later.
Yeah, I'm thinking I can create a sort of on the form itself, I could create an administrative field, which would be a field that does not get viewed from the front end for the user. The vendor doesn't see it. But when you're looking at the list of, when you're looking at the form submissions from the back end, there could be an administrative field that is maybe like a status. So that could basically be a drop down that would be just for administrative purposes only. So where, when the submission comes in, and this is different than the approved or denied status, it would be sort of a submittal process status.
Yeah.
And
So this would kind of be here on this flow chart where they've passed specifications. Patty's requested, the samples be either sent to Montana or Nebraska. We as the lab receives it, and then we'd want to. I guess I don't know how much in the weeds we want to go with that. So like, do we want to track from the date that Patty tells them, hey, send off a sample, and then the next step is Jasmine receives the sample, and then the next step would be I would send results to Patty. So I guess I don't know how detailed, and I'm sure maybe Patty would have maybe thoughts on that.
Yeah.
But I guess
So
I don't know how detailed we want to get that flow in there.
yeah, I mean, if it's a simple thing like having sort of a status drop down, so for any given submission, there could be a status of sort of whose court is the ball in kind of thing, or
Mm-hmm.
so that way at a quick glance, you or Patty could look and see like, oh, this says waiting from so and so or whatever the status is. That would be a pretty straightforward thing to add. If we're talking about a more, and I don't know exactly what this would look like, but if it's like, okay, if the status gets changed to this, then notify so-and-so and have like a timestamp on when that status was changed, that starts getting quite a bit more complicated to sort of not even necessarily to implement, but just to kind of figure out the logic of how that would work. And I don't know, and I guess I don't know how necessary that is. And this is the kind of thing where I wonder how many submissions can you imagine getting? I guess so. It's like if we're building a system and there's thousands of submissions, then there's a certain level of automation and programming that would just be required. Otherwise, it just wouldn't function at all. But if we're talking a few submissions here and there, then having this really robust notification status system customized might not even be necessary. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we're more the latter. We probably get like one per quarter or something like that.
Yeah, we had 6 last year, which I think was a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. So my thought is to create a way so that you can at a glance see where it's at without creating something that's like this whole separate machine to track things that becomes something else that has to be managed itself. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So what if we added sort of, and we can kind of adjust this as we go too. I think there's going to be a certain amount of like, oh, this is living in the real world. We haven't actually gone through having this sort of submittal process seen all the way through to the end. So I think when this launches, it'll be for a while in sort of a beta state, where we're looking at sort of how did that go? Maybe we have sort of a review in a certain amount of time period to say, okay, how's it working? With the sort of communication flow, what might we want to add to that to make that work better? And so maybe we don't need to try to solve every little nuance until it gets up
totally
and running.
with you. Yeah, I'm totally with you on that, Josh, because I think that we need to get this kind of up and going so that they can see the benefit, but also learn from themselves, because you're, like you said, you're not going to solve every problem before you get it going. The other thing I wanted to ask you really quick before I forgot. So there was, you talked about, the pass and the fail, the accept and reject sort of sections, categories, and where those things go. Did you ever get your question answered about if there needed to be an adjustment to a field, not because it was missing, but because they put in a funky number or something like that? Did we answer that?
I think Patty was saying that at that point it would be, they would just need to resubmit the entire form. Okay. I will say that there are ways we can set it up where they can go back in and enter and edit an existing form. Like if you were to notify them and say, hey, the number on this field is wrong or whatever, we could set it up so they could go to their form they already submitted. But I don't know if that.
Okay. Well, I was curious if that was, because again, like you said, I was a little concerned about something like that, just because with your warnings, I don't want us to over complicate something or over engineer it just
Right.
to accommodate them. So I was curious, is there, when they fill these things, these are all online forms, but they don't ever have a chance to say print one out into their, like a PDF for their own records, do they? Or do they?
Well, there's a couple things. One, when they submit it, we talked about the vendor notification. It can say, hey, thanks
Mhm.
for submitting the form. We'll be in touch. It can also include, their entry to, their form entry. So it could
Okay.
say, thanks for your submission. Here's your submission. Just kind of included
Yeah.
automatically the answer to all their fields just for their reference. That would just
And
be
that
in
might
the
make it
email.
easier if they had to resubmit a whole package. They already had everything in there. It's just, they had to maybe pay a little attention to one or two. I don't know. That was just, I was
Yeah.
curious about that. That's interesting. And it doesn't sound like too much over engineering to sort of make
No,
things
that's
not
kind of
so
automated.
cumbersome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. There's sort of like include all the fields that they submitted.
Okay. All right. Well,
Um,
that was the only curiosity. Jasmine, what do you think about that?
I'm good with that. I guess I don't have a strong opinion
Okay.
either way.
um,
All right. I like I said, I didn't want to make over accommodate the submitters, but at the same time, I don't want them to have to, if they had to resubmit everything, they had to start from total scratch. I mean, if they
yeah,
at
I
least
mean, it
had
makes sense. Yeah,
copies, yeah,
it makes sense to say, here's what you submitted. I think that would
yeah,
be a pretty typical scenario.
okay,
Um, for back to the sort of the administrative status field, and we don't necessarily have to answer that now, Jasmine, but I can add to the form sort of what would those statuses be? Because I would need to add those, and you can just follow up in an email um,
Yeah,
if
I'll
that makes
probably
more sense.
call Patty and talk that over with her. And
Yeah.
then one of us will probably maybe get you that list of how detailed we want to go in the different steps.
Okay. And we can start simpler with simple statuses, and like we were saying, as this goes along, we can easily say, you know what, we need to add another status between these two statuses, or,
Right.
whatever makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try and touch base with her in the next couple days, so we're
All
not
right.
dragging it out. I'm gonna make
Um,
note of that myself.
so this we touched on it a little bit, and it's a little unclear to me. What is the end product of these submissions? So it gets passed, and then they get sent out, send in the sample, and everything goes through. And then Patty was talking about, then it sends an email to Greg, sort of what, where does this data live ultimately, and how much of that do we want to be, we've got the qualified products list, which is a PDF, right? That lists all these.
yeah, it is. And Patty and I were talking a little bit about this the other day when we were talking about something else. This came up as well, and I think that we're going to need to hold on to it. Obviously, we're going to need to hold on to these submissions, and I don't know if that means rejected ones for as long as accepted ones, but for as long as something is on, a product is on the QPL, we'll need to hold on to those records. And then for a certain period of time after it moves off the QPL, I think is what Patty was talking
Sure.
about. We just need to decide what that period of time is. So that's another question that's for her and the rest of the group to discuss. But I think, is Josh, would it be like, trying to think, like right now we've got servers for example, we've got some online tools that we have uh, for ClearRoads that we are we're housing tools, and we've got so we've got data storage capabilities. And what we do is we actually do charge ClearRoads for that every month to be able to do that. So I think we've got servers for that stuff. I don't know how data intensive this would be. I don't imagine it'd be that bad, though. We do have a lot of digitized records coming in from Idaho here shortly. there is somebody working on digitizing those and going to be sending them to us. So there's going to be some records to upload. So I think that that's another thing, though, if that's kind of what we're talking about, I think that's another thing that we would need to, the subcommittee would need to agree on, and then actually get a vote from the whole Clear Roads group, because it is something that affects Clear Roads funding overall. So
Well,
what do you think?
I guess I'm still not clear. Do we, because all of this data is coming in through these form entries, we have all of that data available, which could be displayed on the website, sort of a database of these submissions and the data from those submissions. But I don't know if that's what sort of the end goal is, or if you're going to just take that data from these submissions and manually create a new Excel file, or do you want that product at the end, the
Okay.
list, to be automatically generated based on approved entries from this new form submission?
Yeah, I think that's what we want. I think we want to take the approved entries and create a database of those approved entries automatically. I think that was something that we were thinking about from the very beginning. I'm sorry, I didn't
kind of what I thought
totally
too.
understand. Okay.
But we hadn't really talked about the specifics of, and maybe we don't need to get into that yet. But if we do want that to be sort of a dynamic database, it could be sort of, we've used this in other cases, Greg, where you have sort of, here's a table of all of the approved submissions, and here's the product, and then you click on the product, and then it shows you all of the data for that product. Or however, there's lots of different ways we can interact with the submissions. We would just need to figure out what that looks like, so I can build it based on the data that was submitted.
For sure. And I know that this back-end system was really supposed to do two things. One is it's supposed to determine and manage a process for submissions, but also be a database of records. So yeah, I think that what you're describing there is a really cool setup. I'm pretty darn sure that's exactly what Patty wants, but yeah, I wouldn't say 100% for sure, but I'm like 99.9% that's what she wants.
Okay, so for now, are we going to say we're going to circle back to that part of it?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think. Well, Jasmine, what do you think? What I'd like to do is, so we're getting pretty darn close with at least the submittal form, and we can talk pretty intelligently about a process. I'd like to bring the rest of the QPL committee, whoever can join us, into the next meeting, sort of talk a little bit more about, review it, but then also hit on some of these additional questions that we're having right now. Does that sound like a good idea?
Yeah,
And
I think that's good.
when do you, Josh, I mean, depending on your workload and whatever, should we shoot for sometime in February for that?
Will you recap what you're talking about?
Yeah, so just another meeting with the whole committee instead of just, Patty and Jasmine, to show them, review where we're at, the submission form and the revisions that we're making based on our discussion today, and then maybe to talk a little bit more about make sure we do totally understand the process in the database and make, the status. Well, you guys are going to talk about the status too in the next couple of days and get that to Josh. But so I think maybe just kind of reviewing all that with the whole group would be a really good idea. And I don't know if maybe we wait till February to be able to sit down for that meeting.
I mean, that's fine for me. I'll be able to take care of, I have sort of a little punch list here of things to update and implement, and then we can review all of that and have the discussion about what to do with the submissions once everything is approved.
Yeah, I just don't want to push it too much on that and try and do it in the next 2 weeks or something like that. I'd rather make sure we have that additional time. So.
Yep.
Okay.
That works.
All right. Good. Well, Jasmine stepped away, so is that all that you had, or did you have any other questions?
No, that was all for me.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thanks, Josh. Appreciate your time today.
All right.
And so the only other thing you're needing from them, and I think what I'm going to do is, Josh, did you ever get to the back end or not the back end, but the members only page on the Clear Roads website? Have you ever gone there?
On occasion, yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if you had the password. What I'm going to do is I think I'm just going to take this meeting I'm just going to take, rather than creating minutes, I'm just going to take the recording and just post it on there where we have some other meeting notes, and just that way you guys can access it if you want to look back at this. But Josh, was there anything else that you needed from us besides the status question in the next couple days?
No, that was it.
Okay, good. Okay,
All right.
good deal. All right, thanks, guys. Jasmine, did you have anything else?
I don't think so. I think this covered a lot. I think we made a lot of headway. This is a really good meeting.
Okay,
Awesome.
good. What did you have to say, Josh?
All right. Good. Thanks all.
Okay, good.
Have a good
See
one.
you guys. All right.
Bye.